Hey guys, welcome today to Food is Good. And today we're going to be making one of my wife's favorite, which is smothered pork chops. When we used to have the restaurant, at the end of the night, she would always eat this meal right here. So I think I'm going to do a rendition of it for you guys today. So we're going to be doing smothered pork chops, stewed cabbage, and a jasmine rice. And I think when you're eating pork chops, what's better to eat pork chops with than rice? I mean, you can do all different types of things, but I think the rice is going to be awesome because the gravy is going to be with it. So guys, you're going to love it. So let's get started. So guys, let's get started. First thing you want to do is have all your ingredients together. We're going to be using a pork chop, actually a medium cut pork chops that we have right here. Now you can do a thicker pork chop or you can do the real thin ones, but the best one I think is going to be the ones that's probably about a ½ an inch thick right here. So that's what we're going to be using. And what you want to do with this process right here, you're going to take your pork chops and you're going to actually dredge those pork chops in a little oil and flour, and then you're going to put them in a fryer in oil. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get my oil hot right here. So I'm going to get this hot. Boy, this thing's awesome right here. I'm telling you, man, this is one of the best investments right here. So that oil is heating up right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure out some flour. So I'm going to use about a cup of flour to put my pork chops in, and then I'm gonna take my pork chops and put them in my fryer and let them get hot. Let them be getting hot. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and measure out some flour here. About 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And guys, whenever you're cooking with all-purpose flour, you definitely want to salt, pepper this flour. I'm gonna do this here. Just back to the side here. Back in the days, I'll be honest with you, I used to cheat and I really wouldn't use all-purpose flour. I would use self-rising flour for everything. I probably shouldn't even be saying this, but I would use self-rising flour for everything. So especially when I was making my gravies and all of that, it would bubble over. So I started thinking, you know, I probably should not cut corners and I probably should just use all-purpose flour. You can always add your salt, garlic, and pepper to it. Do need to add a little garlic to it. Because if you use self-rising flour, what you're doing is you're getting a lot of things that you really don't need. And the biggest thing you're gonna get, especially if you're making gravy, you're gonna get the leavener. So it's gonna make it rise over. And that's what used to happen to me all the time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take I already got my skillet. It's getting really hot over here. It's on about 305 degrees. I'm just gonna dredge my pork chops in this right here. When you're doing smothered pork chops, you want that little breading on the outside of it. You don't want to grill the pork chops in at the gravy. For some reason, the gravy just does not stick to the pork chops as well. So I'm going to take this right here. I'm going to do 2 of them. So I'm going to take this right here, and you can hear it bubbling. And I think I probably need to cut it up just a little to be on the safe side right here. Now I can really hear it. It's cooking. Do the same thing with this one right here. Pork chops right here. Like I said, this is one of my wife's favorite meals when we used to have the restaurant. We no longer have a restaurant anymore. We just do a lot of catering now. So we're going to put it here. And while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my hands, get this stuff out the way. Whenever you're working with raw products, chicken, pork, you want to be sure to wash your hands. So those are browning up right there. While those are browning up, I'm going to go ahead and work on some onions here. Get my onions going. Because once those pork chops browned up, and they're going to cook about 3 minutes, let's say 3 minutes on each side. Once those pork chops finish browning up on one side, I'm going to go ahead and flip them over. You know, this is a terrible knife. We're not going to use this knife. We're going to get the big boy here. Do this here. And what I'm doing is, once I finish sauteing my pork chops, I'm going to take that hot oil and I'm gonna put my onions and mushroom in it. Never be afraid to season your food. I think that should be the name of my cookbook. Never be afraid to season your food. And what I'm doing is, you can julienne the onions. I'm cutting them with a little width on them, so they're not super thin. Because if you cook them really thin, cut them really thin, they're gonna kind of cook away when you're doing your gravy. So those are looking really good over there. Get a spatula here. I'm gonna just take a look at them. Right here. They're browning. So while those are cooking, my mushrooms are right, my onions are right here. I'm going to start working on some mushrooms. Whenever you're doing mushrooms, you want to wipe those mushrooms off. You don't want to wash them, but you don't want to get a damp cloth, paper towel, kind of just wipe them off. That's what we're doing. Have I always done it? Yes. So I'm going to chop them up right here. Cutting about the same size that I'm going to cut the onion, that I've cut the onions up on. Most important thing when you're chopping, keep those fingers back. So right here, so we have an onions and mushroom right there. So it's ready. Pork chops are looking good over here. They're browning up. Guys, like I said, this is one of my wife's favorite meals. I think if I had to have a favorite meal, mine would be fish. So we'll be doing that in the upcoming episodes. But this right here, when you talk about Sunday meal at Granny's house, it's going to be some form of something smothered. My grandmother, this is so funny. My grandmother used to go buy chicken from this place. I'm just going to say 7 Herbs and Spices. And she would bring the chicken home and she would smother it. And I promise you, it was some of the best chicken and smothered gravy we'd have. And she would always pair it with something like buttermilk, macaroni and cheese, cornbread. So it was really good. I'm looking forward to cooking some of those things. I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to be getting my chicken from the Colonel. Let me just say that. We'll cook it from fresh. So while this is still cooking, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think my grease was quite hot enough, so it's having to cook a little bit longer, but it's almost there. We're not trying to cook it all the way. Some people may say you cook it all the way, but we're not trying to cook it all the way, because what I'm going to do is my gravy that I'm going to make, I'm going to put my onions and mushroom in there, then I'm going to make a little gravy for it. I'm going to add my pork chops to it and stick it in the oven. So that's what we're going to do in that right there. So these are browning up right here, looking good. And this looks really good right here. And it smells really good too. Wow. Oh, wow, that's cooking right there. Almost there. We got this together right here. Let me talk about something else we're going to be doing. So while the pork chops is cooking, we already got the onions and mushroom. We're going to start working on some cabbage. Now, it's going to be a second before we do that, but we're going to start working on some cabbage. One thing about cabbage, when you're working with cabbage right here, you don't have to put a whole lot of water in your cabbage, simply because cabbage is made up of a lot of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cut my cabbage right here, breaking it down. While that's working, I'm going to go ahead and take the core out of my cabbage. That can be kind of bitter. Take that out right there. Right here. And we're just going to go ahead and chop this up. Do a rough chop. You don't want fine. You're not making coleslaw, so you don't want it fine. You want it kind of rough. It's all good. I'm probably breaking some kind of southern law by having cabbage and not having cornbread. I'm not going to tell anybody though. So this is looking really good over here. It's browning up. Got some good color on it. I think it looks really good here. Can't wait to eat this. Can't wait for Stephanie to try this. Be honest with you, growing up, everybody in my family cooked. My mom cooked, my dad cooked, grandparents cooked. You know, whenever I'm gonna stop. I was gonna say something. I'm gonna say it anyway. You know, uh, I'm not gonna say it. I was gonna say something really ridiculous, but I'm not. I'm not gonna say it. My mom would have my head if I said it. She'd probably put me in the closet if I said something being funny. Anyway, so this is browning up right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull those pork chops off. I'm gonna put the pork chops back on the same plate it was on because I'm gonna stick this pork chop back in that gravy and stick them in the oven. So we're good. I do need to check my oven and make sure my oven is on 350. Why 350? Because I cook everything on 350 other than biscuits. So 350 it is. So I'm gonna stick this right over here. I'm gonna check the oven. It looks like the oven needs to go up a little higher. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut the oven up just a little higher. Three. Okay, so it doesn't want to go up a little higher. We're gonna give it a second. So right now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and saute off my onions and mushrooms. Smells good. Smells good. So stir those up just a little. Guys, I don't know if you can smell this at home, but this smells really, really good. Really, really good. We're browning these up just a little. So while my onions and mushroom are browning up a little, I'm gonna add a little bit more flour to it. Then I'm gonna add a little chicken base to it. And then it's gonna thicken up. I'm gonna add my pork chops back to it and put it in the oven. So let's check this oven again. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it on 350. Okay, so we got that right. So this is looking good right here. You're not trying to burn it. You're just trying to saute. You're actually kind of sweating them just a little. So I'm gonna turn that down just a little because they're starting to get a little brown on me. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna add a little flour to it. So I'm gonna add about, I'm gonna say probably about a half a cup. Actually, not even that much. 1/4 of a cup of flour to this. This is gonna serve as a thickener for your pork chops. I'm gonna stir this up a little. Nobody likes lumpy gravy. Or they shouldn't like lumpy gravy. Have I ever made lumpy gravy? Of course not. Who would do that? And tell people. So anyway, it's coming together quite nicely. It's gonna be really good. Now, truth be told, in my 30 years of cooking, I've probably done a little bit of everything wrong, and then I've came back to do it right. So I've made lumpy gravy before, but if you do have a gravy and it comes out a little lumpy, you can always fix it. You can always put it through a really mesh strainer, get the lumps out. I've even put them in food processors to get the lumps out. So this is coming together quite nicely. What I am going to do, I'm going to add a little bit more flour to that, because I like thick gravy. And I would much rather have it a little thick, so I am gonna put about a half a cup of flour in there. That was my original thought, and I second guessed myself. But if it's too thick, you can always thin it out. If it's too thin, at a certain point, there's nothing you can do with it. It's just thin. So this is coming together quite nicely. Right here, it smells good. She's gonna really like this. Really like this. So while that's coming together, this is browning up. Now, when you're cooking gravy, a few different things. I'm cooking it a little dark, just a little dark, because I don't want, it's not chicken gravy. You know, so I want it to have a little color on it, and the more you cook it, the darker it gets. It also it doesn't rise as much the darker it gets. So we're cooking this right here, and it's coming together. I'm liking the way that looks though. So I'm going to take some of my chicken broth, and I'm going to put a little chicken broth in there. Low sodium or no salt chicken broth, because I want to add my own salt. So this is coming together. It's looking good. You can see it's starting to thicken up just a little. Oh, that looks really, really, really good. I'm going to add a little bit more chicken broth to it. Right here. Get that. I'm going to take the whisk. It's coming together. So now what I'm going to do It's not quite at the consistency I want it to be. It's actually a little thick. So I'm gonna add a little bit more chicken broth to it, or a lot more chicken broth to it. That was Jesus calling to tell me it's almost ready. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do now, because it's looking good. Pork chops right here. And man, those onions and mushrooms are gonna be so good in that. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little gravy across that. Oh my goodness, that looks so good. Right here. Oh my goodness. This is gonna be good right here. So at this point, since it's a stainless steel, I can just stick it right in the oven. I'm gonna let this do its thing in the oven for, I'm gonna say give it about 15 minutes in the oven, because you want those pork chops, you wanna make sure those pork chops is good and done, and you wanna also make sure they're tender. So you don't wanna overcook them, but you wanna make sure they're done. So you can tell, this is gonna be really good. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna taste this. As a matter of fact. Actually, they can use a little salt. So we need a little salt. Put a little salt in that. Always add a little pepper. Looking good, looking good. So now I'm gonna take this right here and stick it in the oven. Let us do its thing for about 15 minutes in the oven. And now we're gonna get started on the cabbage. So right now what we're doing is we got the pork chops in there, and I promise you, I've kind of snuck and tasted it. They taste really good. So they're in the oven, they're doing their thing in there. I'm gonna take another quick peek at them. Quick peek at them, looking good. Looking good. There again, you don't want to overcook them. You don't want to overcook them. Boy, Stephanie's going to love those. I'm going to take that, get that in there. My water is starting to come to a boil. I'm going to go ahead and salt it. You don't add a lot of salt, like I said, or add a lot of water, like I said, to your cabbage, because your cabbage is made up of a lot of water. So we're going to go ahead and take this, and it's going to cook down. So we're going to do this right here. You're not going to believe what we're going to do to this cabbage. It's going to be awesome. Awesome. It's good. So we got the cabbage in here working. Not too much. You don't want to crowd it in there. So we're going to take a little bit of it out right there. Yeah. So that cabbage is working. I'm going to go ahead and get my carrots right here. I'm going to start peeling my carrots off so I can put it in my cabbage. This recipe that I'm doing, the stewed tomatoes, cabbage, it's actually called stewed cabbage. And the reason it's called stewed is because you're stewing off the tomatoes. So right now, I'm gonna add a little carrots to it. It's kind of a kicked up version of something I grew up eating. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama. I was there for about 19 years. I've been in Cleveland, Tennessee, 31 years. So I've been in Cleveland longer than I was in Mobile. So I've experienced what food tastes like in Alabama and what food tastes like in Tennessee. And I'll be honest with you, both areas, the food is amazing. It is amazing. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my carrots, but I'm gonna cut them real thin, because if I cut them thick, it's not gonna cook with the same kind of consistency as the cabbage. So we're just gonna cut those things real thin. There again, I say this all the time. I say this to my guys when we're working together, man, keep those fingers back. Simply because I've cut my finger before. Had to go to the doctor one time, or that particular time, went to the doctor. I cut the tip of my finger off because I was using a knife, not paying attention, and chopping. We never do that now. So I got those carrots in there, right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and stir it up just a little. You know, stirring that up, smelling really good. Cooking that off. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little onion in this also. So while those are cooking, smelling good, I'm gonna take an onion. Square off the bottom of my onion, like I said earlier, just so it's not rolling all over the place and you're trying to chase it. So we're gonna do that. Cut this off here. Cut it down the middle. People ask the question, how do you cut onions without it burning your eyes and all of that? I have a secret for that. Cut it quick. Because that's the only way I know. People say you can soak it in milk, you can put it in the freezer. I've tried all that. I've even tried cutting onions with a mask on my face. Didn't work. Did not work. So while this cabbage is cooking, let it do its thing. I'm gonna take a look at the pork chops. Ooh, smells good. Very hot. Right here. Oh my God, this is good. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just basting this gravy on top of it, on top of the pork chops. It's looking good. Right here. It's almost ready. Get rid of this extra stuff right here. Cabbage is coming along nicely rather, right here. Sometimes when I cook cabbage, I'll put a little sugar in it. I'm not gonna do sugar because I got a secret. I am gonna do black pepper in it. I've already put salt in it. Let this cook a little bit more. Right here. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add in some stewed tomatoes. You can stew your own tomatoes if you have time, or you can just buy some stewed and save some time. And we're just gonna, did I buy this can opener or did my wife buy this can opener? I probably bought it because it's not working that great, but I think we can get the job done. Right here. So, just gonna take this and put it right in here. Oh, this is so good. Looks so good. Get back in there. Here. You don't want to do too much stirring because you're not trying to make tomato soup. Right here. It's cooking. It's doing its thing right here. I'm going to hit it with a little bit more black pepper. Right here. Taste this. Here. That's good. It does need more salt though. Not the same spoon. It could be the same spoon. It's just me eating and my wife, but it's not. I can imagine my aunt calling me from Texas. Caesar, you ate off that spoon and stuck it back in there. Well, I didn't. This time. No, I didn't. It's looking really good, guys. So, we're gonna let it do its thing over here. I'm gonna take this and put it over here and jump over to the next thing. Next thing, real simple. We're gonna knock it out really quick, is the rice. Here's the deal. I struggled with rice for years, not being able to get that rice right. I figured out the secret when you're doing rice. Go ahead and put a little oil in your pan that you're gonna cook your rice in. We're gonna add a little rice right here, about 1 cup of rice. The oil doesn't have to be hot before you put it in there. 1 cup of rice. We're gonna stir this rice up and coat it very nicely. And then we're going to add, if we put in 1 cup of rice, we're going to put in 2 cups of water. So while that's doing that, looking good, looking good, looking good. So we're going to add in 2 cups of water. One. 2. Now what I do is I can finish my rice on the stove here, on the induction cooker here, but you know what I do? I just stick it in the oven. Let it do its thing in there. Right along next to the pork chops. Y'all get along now. So that's in there cooking. So now we're just waiting. I'm gonna say we're gonna give that rice, if the water was hot, you can give that rice about 10 minutes. Actually, you can do it 8 minutes on the stove. In the oven, about 10 minutes. Since the water was more warm, I'm gonna say give that rice about 15 minutes in the oven. You don't wanna overcook the rice. Nobody wants gummy rice. Nobody wants gummy rice. Or nobody's gonna, they're not gonna tell you they don't want it, they're just not gonna eat it. Anyway, we'll be right back. So guys, our rice was in the oven, has been in the oven cooking next to our smothered pork chops. Let's see how it's going. Because I want to guess or bet it's ready. Oh my God. Every time I say, oh my God, I feel like saying, oh my goodness, but I'm not gonna say it. So I'm gonna pull out my smothered pork chops. That's an old 90s reference. You know, these young kids today probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about, but this looks good. Oh my goodness, that looks good. Check on my rice. Right here. This looks good too. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is gonna be so good. Seth is gonna be so excited to eat this here. Amazing. Right here. So I'm just gonna start doing some plating. That smells good. Oh, hey babe. So I decided today to cook your favorite dish, smothered pork chops. I know you ask about it all the time. Right here, so we have some jasmine rice right here. Pork chops right here. It's huge. That's like a pork chop steak. It's huge. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna go ahead and stir up my gravy just a little bit more. I'll be honest with you, it'll start to separate. We'll bring it back together. Put some unity here amongst this stuff. So right here, what I'm gonna do is I got that there. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little gravy across it, right here. You're probably saying, well, why isn't he using a measuring cup? Because I can't find one, to be honest with you. That's why I'm not using it. Well, a spoon. And then I'm gonna pair it off with a little stewed cabbage.
I know it's gonna be good. It's always so good.
I know it is. I'm gonna come on the side right here. That's good. That's really good. Guys,
my favorite meal.
Thanks for watching. Food is good. We're gonna let y'all go so we can eat this. Bye.
Bye.